neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Well, maybe if I press this button. This is a cassette player with a little cassette in here, and there's nothing written on it, so we'll just have to play it to see what it is. Do you ever imagine things? Are they scary things? Do you ever imagine things? Things you'd like to have? Did you ever see a cat's eyes in the dark and wonder what they were? Did you ever pretend about things like that before? Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden.
Alright, okay, time to get serious. Like this 12-volt Milwaukee with a 1/2-inch adapter and a 15/16. Check this out. Whoa, blows the crank bolt right out. What a maniac. And well, most of you are familiar with this cam. It is the Sloppy Stage 2. And I wanted to try something different, but I get so many questions that are like, what will that make on motor? What will that make through a stick shift? So I decided for now to do the same cam that I always do and see what it makes through a stick shift and on motor, on gasoline, and on E85. And holy shit, did someone glue these valve covers down? Anyway, I'll be putting in the Sloppy Stage 2 cam today and probably doing valve springs another day since I only have so much time in a day. And, you know, I'd like to reiterate, my buddy Taylor Ray said in one of his videos recently, one of my quotes where, you know, an hour a day goes a long way. So people are always feeding the excuse that they just didn't have time, and they don't know that a lot of times I'll just spend 30 minutes on something and come back to it, you know, another day or the next day, and that 30 minutes to an hour all the time adds up and gets things done. Imagine that. So think about that next time you realize you don't have 12 hours to do something. If you can set everything up and just do everything in small increments the right way, you'll get done fast. It'll happen. Trust me. And of course, in preparation for camshaft install, easiest way to do it is on an engine stand. Just rip out the rockers and everything and flip the motor over so the lifters can't fall, and stuff the cam in. And then, you know, you're done with the cam install. You just have to do your choice of valve springs or whatever your cam dictates valve spring wise. So, and here you can also see one of my tricks, which is I lay the valve cover on the ground with the coil pack bolts in it. It lays totally flat, and I put the entire rocker row assembly and all of the push rods in. Just stack them in there nice and neat. Put the valve cover down on the ground, and I'm using the 1/2-inch with an adapter here to knock these out because it's just way faster. I never strip them out or hurt them or anything else. It just obviously takes way less time to use a heavy impact on those little 7mm, 8mm. I can't even remember. Is that awful? I believe they're 8s. That looks like my AutoZone 8mm. Pull the push rods. Set the rockers in the valve cover like its own little parts tray. Put the push rods in the little parts tray. And basically we're ready to flip the motor over because, as I've shown many times, that's the easiest way to do it. Lifters can't fall down into the oil pan if the motor's upside down. Back to the play-by-play. We got the 10mm, blasting all of these. Man, I almost said valve cover, but the cam timing cover, taking all the bolts out. Real simple. Again, that drip pan that goes over the engine stand is incredible. I should have bought one for myself forever ago. Luckily enough, you guys are awesome and sent one in. And now, since this is a Gen 4, the truck motor actually has a cam chain tensioner. Check it out. So it makes it way easier to just pull the oil pump. And I made a mistake here. Obviously, I loosened the cam chain tensioner. And when I went to spin the motor over dot to dot, it just got like all bound up and was hindering the process. So learn from my mistake there. Not a really big mistake, but also you can see here a big difference is these Gen 4 motors. A lot of them are single bolt cam gear. See that giant 15/16 bolt? I believe that's what I'm going to grab right now. The Impact 5/16. Yes, sir. So I get ready to blast that off, and then I realize I should spin this thing over to top dead center before I take it apart. Make it easier on myself. It's always good to work smarter instead of harder, but it's tough when your brain is telling you to do stupid shit like this. See the cam chain tensioner? I just popped that Delrin or plastic or whatever it's made out of. And I'm like, okay, now it's all bound up. Cool, you're a jerk. Who's the asshole that did this? Me. I'm like, okay, I'll drop this thing back in. And then I'm like, nah, it doesn't really fit. I can't put it back in right now. So, well, deal with the mess you made and then get the damn cam sprocket off. Get the bolt out. Redo everything once you get the cam done. No big deal, right? Now that it's all lined up, it's time to put that 15/16 on the knuckle duster here. Wrap that thing off on medium power. Yeah, show the boys and girls. Don't even need full power. And then here again, it's been a long time since I've honestly done a motor with a cam chain tensioner, so just trying to make it easy on myself. It holds the cam chain extremely tight if you have never messed with one of these. It is annoying as hell. Actually, it's so much nicer to do like a Gen 3 truck motor with no tensioner. You can just drop this stuff in and out in like 2 seconds. Then people get all sweaty about the cam chain moving, which like I've shown you guys, I've taken a 240,000 mile motor and put a cam in it and dropped all the stock equipment right back in and had no problems. Also, notably here, if you guys don't do a lot of Gen 4 stuff, you can see there are Torx bolts on this cam plate. And I don't have very many Torx bolts, honestly. So I had to actually go into my Kia to get my dyno rescue kit, has a larger Torx bit, and use that guy. So here's me looking like, I think I only have Allen keys. I don't have a... Yeah, well, let's take a look at these Torx bits. Oh, well. Nope, there are no fucking Torx bits in here other than like the Harbor Freight little wallet piece of junk ones, which aren't going to cut it. I'm like, damn it, where do I have a Torx bit? Look at me looking around. Brain. Oh, go in the Kia, you dumbass. Get the toolkit out of the Kia. Yeah, you got Torx bits in there. Good boy. So the Cobalt Dyno Kia Rescue Toolkit comes to the rescue again. I have the appropriate size torque bit, which, man, I couldn't tell you what it is now. If I had to guess, I think it's like a T30, T40. That might be totally wrong, but it was larger than any of the shitty ones I had, so put it on the 12-volt brapper, brap these guys out, and get ready to pull this cam out. No big deal. Super easy, right? Not intimidating at all. Throw this cam plate into some stones and some sand on the ground. Get that big single bolt. Help you yank this thing out. Be careful not to look at your cam bearings. Obviously. Once the cam is out, I usually just like to look at it, check, make sure all the lobes are there. every now and then you can have a lift to go bad and just destroy the cam. So if you look at the cam and none of the lobes are destroyed, it's a good chance that none of your lifters are destroyed. So you don't have to mess with your lifters at that point. And off camera there, I was grabbing the sloppy stage 2, ripping it out of the Elgin box, throw that shit to the side. Oh, there she is. Isn't that thing nice? Very nice. Stuff the cam in there. A lot of people lose their damn mind that I put these cams in dry, but this motor has been running for 200,000 miles, and there's plenty of oil everywhere inside the motor. And my hands are a little bit oily, so I'm gonna oil up the cam. I mean, I can understand if you have a fresh motor that's never been run, that's a good argument. Or if the motor's gonna sit, you might wanna put petroleum jelly, or your favorite whatever cam break-in bullshit lube on that thing, so it doesn't get all rusty sitting in the block doing nothing. But that's not what I'm going to do with this motor. It's going to actually get used in a timely manner. So I screw the water pump bolts. Man, I stuffed that word. I use those water pump bolts. They're great for using as a cam install tool. And then, ta-da, it's time to put on the 3-bolt cam gear. Now, here's another Gen 4 specific thing. It does not have the rear cam position sensor to read the cam position. So you need to put on the appropriate cam trigger wheel on the front. It uses a 4X event, so one in like a 99 to 06 truck, Gen 3, 24X uses a single event cam gear, a 1X. It has one tooth. And if you look at the cam gear I'm going to install, it has 4 teeth. So that's the 4X cam gear. So if you're going, there are plenty of instances where you can do custom stuff, but if you're running a stock computer or you don't want to give yourself a headache if you can't figure this stuff out, 58X needs the 58X needs a 4X cam gear, 24 tooth needs a 1X cam gear. Since this has no way to read the back of the motor, it obviously needs to read the 4X on the front. And then here I'm installing the cam chain tensioner because obviously I don't want it being a pain in the ass again when I try to spin everything to fit. Making it loose was a bad decision. It just ended up binding everything up. So I reach into my lucky parts bin here and I grab the stock chain, loop that guy on the crankshaft, and I take a few stabs at this. There isn't as much room. Normally what I do is I just drop that in and I pick up the slack around the crank and line it up, but with the tensioner in there, that isn't as easy. It might be possible. I don't know if it's impossible, but see that? I try to pull the slack around the teeth. It ain't happening. So I got to drop this guy in here once or twice. I go to drop it in here and I'm too far past to the right. It's obvious, so I move it a tooth. Oh, I'm like, that'll probably work out. And after some persuasion, it did work out. The only thing here is the cam slightly off, wasn't perfect. So another trick is grab those water pump bolts again and get them in there, and you can actually rotate the cam, pull the cam back with the bolts, push the gear forward, and get everything to line up. You can see it'll go dink. Oh, now it's in place. Now, before you pull those out, you go ahead and you put a bolt in. Now, part of my dilemma here is that was a single bolt cam gear, so I don't have bolts for the cam. So what you do is you put an oil pan bolt in there. Now, some cams actually have a pretty shallow, that's what I'm doing here is I'm seeing how far the bolt goes in, if it goes tight. Some camshafts do not have a very deep hole, so the camshaft bolts are actually shorter than the oil pan bolts. So that's something you got to watch out for. The bolt actually won't tighten. You'll see there's a gap. You can wiggle the cam gear, but I tested that out, made sure, and I'm over here just running everything home, making sure everything's tight, going over all the bolts, and I believe we're onto the oil pump already. And that's a fairly simple process. I just jam the oil pump on. Oh no, before I do the oil pump, I'm going to spin the motor over a few times and then check and make sure the dots line up. So we spin her over once or twice, and then I think in my next clip here, I actually show you the dots so you can see them. So we'll go ahead and load that up right now. Oh man, I was right. Check this out. This is a pretty good view of, people always do a terrible job of showing this, but it's easy while the motor's on an engine stand. You can see the 2 timing marks lining up beautifully. Now with that job done, we can remove the crank bolt. I think it interferes. The skirt on this bolt, I believe, interferes with the oil pump install. It may not. It probably does. That oil pump's on there pretty tight. So I just yanked it out of there anyway. And I go to toss this on and the damn gear falls. Pain in the ass. So yank it back off, pull the bolt up. Pull that eccentric drive gear back up. Oh yeah, it's happy. It's happy. Everything looks good. Now you're ready to put your bolts back in. Now, some people make a pretty big deal about this, but I've never had an issue. They say that you should put a feeler gauge or a bunch of feeler gauges. People vary the size when you look this explanation up, but you should put feeler gauges top, bottom, left, right in at least 4 spots to make sure it has the same amount of space or play around the entire eccentric drive. But I just put the bolts in. I just make sure that it's not heavy on one side or the other. I just give it a little bit of wiggle room and I just ship it. It's fine with that. So now I am missing 3 timing cover bolts because I use them on my cam, but I have plenty of those laying around, and those are very easy to find. Oil pan and timing gear bolts, timing cover bolts. So they're all the same bolt, all the same length. Like I said though, one thing you got to watch out for is those cam gear bolts are shorter, and in some camshafts they do not cut enough depth for you to put the longer bolt in. So again, that's just something you got to watch out for. But if you're in a pinch or there's no problem, you can do what I did.
You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.